I've been working on a Pixar movie on and off for about a long time. This is the big moment for an actor in an animated movie. I have 4 kids, but when I started doing this, I think I only had 2. Actually, I did. I only had 2 kids when I started doing this, but it's been the most pleasant experience. I'm getting a little weepy. Toy Story 3, our little picture.
Toy Story characters have been in our hearts and minds after all these years. We've been thinking about it and wanting to do Toy Story 3 for so long.
The toys have just become really iconic characters, and it has to do with a lot of factors. I mean, they're really funny, interesting characters, but the people that voice them, the actors that voice those characters, were also a big part of making those characters great.
I know we're not doing great. And you can help out once in a while because you need the money.
We invited all the core actors back from the classic characters. It was great. It was like a reunion.
It's been 15 years since the first Toy Story.
You look good, Woody. You look good.
It's nice that Pixar and Disney brought everybody together. There's a comfort to it. It's a family comfort.
Come back to a lovely, familiar, happy place.
We've been so fortunate that the talent in all of our films, and in particular the Toy Story films, are just a part of us. They're family. And on this film, we cast a whole slew of new characters.
There is no way out of here. Just kidding. Door's right over there.
Buttercup is played by Jeff Garlin. There's Dolly, who's played by Bonnie Hunt.
Buzz. Oh, that's interesting. Is that Icelandic?
We have Trixie the Triceratops, played by the delightful Kristen Schaal.
Hello, I'm Trixie.
We have Mr. Pricklepants, played by the dashing Timothy Dalton.
Well, excuse me. I'm trying to stay in character.
Stretch the purple glittery octopus, voiced by Whoopi Goldberg.
What did you expect from a girl's toy? I'm not a girl's toy. I'm not. Why do you guys keep saying that?
Ken is played by the amazingly talented Michael Keaton.
And being Ken is about having fun.
Lee and I were blown away by how much energy and improv and passion he brought to that part.
Groovy, huh? Yeah. Ken has good genes that happen to look great in jeans.
Well, hello there.
And then finally, we have Lotso. He's played by Ned Beatty, who's a fantastic character actor, kind of a national treasure in the acting community.
I feel really wonderful about being a part of this film. I can't express that too much.
I knew he would be great for Lotso because not only has he done a lot of comedy in his career, but he's also done a lot of really great dramatic roles, and I kind of needed both.
Now bring a little bit of your drawl back
Okay, a little more draw. He knew what he wanted. It was a question sometimes of finding just the right dialect.
We decided to give him this kind of New Orleans drawl because we thought it just made him that much more relaxed and laid back and trustworthy.
Lotso basically sounds like he lives uptown in New Orleans.
I thought I heard new voices.
Welcome to Sunnyside, folks. I'm Lotso Hugging Bear.
That's awesome. Part of our process in making Toy Story 3 is the same way that people have been making animated features back since Snow White, and that's that we create an elaborate story reel.
They just showed us the entire animatic, and it lasted exactly as long as the movie itself.
They showed it in storyboards, very rudimentary. I thought the story's so good, we all got emotional over that one.
And gradually, different elements are replaced, like the real actors' voices get put in.
Come on, guys. Let's get our parts together, get ready, and go out on a high note.
I'd better find my other eye.
Where'd you leave it this time?
Someplace dark and dusty. I didn't even work with Don Rickles. We do our lines individually, not as a group.
And you don't get the whole script. You just get your pages.
So we only know what our lines mean at that particular scene.
So this is you making your getaway. You've just robbed a train.
And we're thrilled.
And you're thrilled, and you're kind of this ninja warrior, right? That's why you did all that stuff for it.
And we have Lee, our director, who explains the whole story and plays all of the characters.
Try a little less, like, breathy. She's sounding a little Marilyn Monroe-ish.
Oh, we don't want that.
Voiceover work, I think, is so great because things are happening around you and you can't see it, so you have to imagine it, and then you also have to make your voice and emotion match what's happening in the scene. So you really have to exercise your imagination muscle. Oh, that's just a velociraptor toy down the street. Oh, that's just a velociraptor toy down the street. Oh, that's just a dinosaur toy down the street. That's nothing.
It's an incredibly complex process. There's whole days that you have to just do grunting and panting and breathing.
A nose side right here. That's what it says.
I heard that was your specialty.
I'm guessing that is a...
Could you do it a little wetter? There you go.
Sorry.
Awesome.
Up, up.
Oh, ah, ooh, ah, ah, ooh, ah, ooh, ooh,
Wait, where's this switch? I love these characters. I helped make Toy Story and Toy Story 2, and so for me, it was like coming home again. It was like working with old friends. The only character that we had to recast, unfortunately, was Slinky Dog.
Slink, gather everyone up.
We are gathered, Woody.
Because Jim Varney passed away right after we made Toy Story 2. But we've recast him with a really talented actor named Blake Clark, who very much captures the essence and spirit of Slinky Dog's character.
Well, how you doing?
I just wanted to do right by the role and do right by Jim. We were friends. I met him in 1980. I was working the door at the Comedy Store. And he's from Kentucky and I'm from Georgia. And so we just kind of hit it off. We did a movie together.
Who are we kidding? The kid's 17 years old.
Yeah, we ain't ever getting played with.
I tried to picture in my mind Jim when I was doing the voice and try to,
talk like Jim. What time is it? Bizarro, why don't you make some fudge? Andy threw us out.
Okay, awesome.
Lee took me really by surprise and I got kind of choked up. He said, I think Jim would have been proud, so I didn't see that coming and I got tears in my eyes. Jim he's a good guy. Funny. Very, very funny man.
So you're Bonnie? I'm Andy. Someone told me you're really good with toys.
One of the decisions that I made very early on this film was to reach out to John Morris, the actor who had played young Andy in Toy Story and Toy Story 2. We didn't know where he was. We didn't know if he was still acting. We didn't know if he'd even be interested or if he'd even sound right. But we got his phone number and we called and he didn't answer, but we got his answering machine. And the moment I heard his voice on the answering machine, I thought, hallelujah, he sounds great. He still sounds young.
And this is Buzz Lightyear, the coolest toy ever made. Look, he can fly. The first Toy Story I auditioned for when I was 7. I've been involved in these films for 17 years, which is the vast majority of my life. And so it's quite profound.
So we brought John in from very early on and started working with him and recording the beginnings of what became the Goodbye Andy scene at the end of the movie.
This is Jessie, the roughest, toughest cowgirl in the whole West.
And it was very emotional for John, too, because he's grown now. He's in his early 20s and has gone to college and moved on in his life. And, for him, this is about change and a passage as well. I think this whole experience was very resonant for him.
It is bittersweet. It's very emotional. And it's been very emotional recording it to say goodbye to them and to say goodbye to years and years of love and play and connection and devotion. Okay, now you gotta promise to take really good care of these guys. They mean a lot to me.
It was a major responsibility to make Toy Story 3, to bring these characters back to life again. But rather than being intimidated by it, I just completely embraced it. The very last shot of the movie is all of our characters.
What?
Look under your boot, Woody.
That's my line.
You too, Jesse.
This is a great relationship because there's just an element of respect for each other. Been mirrored in a relationship I've got with Hank.
You got like 6 words in this one.
Thank you for pointing that out, Tom.
Well, it's official. You guys made the wall. I've been so fortunate to do so many things in my career, but I can say that I'm the most proud of the association with Pixar. My favorite place to work. I'm just honored to be a part of it.
This is such a collaborative art form. The actor's voice infused into the process is very, very fascinating. So what they bring to it is soul. They bring in their soul and their talent, and they breathe this beautiful life into these characters.
And what's great is I get credit for it somehow, because I've been the voice of Woody for these many years. Kids that are in college coming up to me and they say, boy, when you told that neighbor kid in Toy Story 1 to play nice, that really meant a lot to me. And I thought, well, that was my voice. I wasn't really I'll take the credit.
They're timeless pieces. I mean, they're classics, and they're gonna be around forever. After I laid my voice down, and I was like, well, I guess I'm immortal now, you know?
How many toys are in this film?
The number of characters of the movie is particularly high.
I don't even know what the final count was.
How many? No, because there's so many, right?
I mean, they're definitely over 100.
150 plus characters in it? I think it's over 200 characters.
1,297 toys in this film. No, I have no idea.
New toys!
Well, there's some funny challenges I didn't expect. I thought we just open up the box and there's Buzz, okay, and there's Woody, and you would make the movie. But we had to rebuild all the characters. The technology has changed, grown, evolved since Toy Story 2. So we're rebuilding Buzz and Woody. I didn't think we didn't have to do that.
We went into the old models because we still had them, and we examined them like doing archaeology in a way. We go into the old shading code and see Eben Osby's name, Bill Reeves, Ed Catmull, people whose papers we used to read in university. And when you have to recreate them, you realize how much craftsmanship really went into it. We didn't have to do a lot for Toy Story 3. We had to just kind of be true to what was already there.
When we saw the first animation test and when we saw the first teaser, where everybody said, oh my God, they're back again, they're back live again.
Didn't I tell you it looked great, huh? Oh, Buzz, where the heck have you been?
We met in the screening room with John Lasseter and Lee Unkrich to figure out what exactly we wanted to make sure we kept about old Buzz and sort of changed subtly for new Buzz. Old Buzz's brows have 3 controls each. Our new brows that we've done for the past few films, each brow has about 20 to 25 controls. So we actually chopped out a lot of the controls that we would ordinarily put into a human and limited it to a much smaller subset so that it was closer to what we had on classic Buzz.
Estoy rodeado por criaturas extrañas y desconozco.
There's a particular moment in Toy Story 3 where Buzz is Spanish Buzz.
My name is Carlos Baena. I'm an animator on Toy Story 3, and I was mostly responsible for animating Buzz in his Spanish mode. One of the things in Buzz when he's in Spanish mode that I've been playing with a lot is doing things that are unexpected.
¿Han visto mi nave espacial?
His attitude drives from flamenco dancers, where everything is very powerful.
We looked at a lot of video of bullfighters and Latin ballroom dancing. Carlos went off on his own.
I try a lot of different things. I shot a bunch of reference by myself. I'll draw it as a roadmap.
And he put together this animation test. Everybody loved it, and in a moment we knew who Spanish Buzz was. When the toys donate themselves to Sunnyside, they have a vision of what it's going to be. I always described it as being like a Boca Raton retirement home. Like they're just gonna live their lives forever and be happy. And it's fun to then see the rug get pulled out from under them and have it turn out to be not such a great place.
Lotso's gang, they're bad guys. You know, really, they're a gang.
They need to be the heavies, so they can't feel dinky. They need to be strong.
Each character in that gang had to have a purpose.
So you've got Stretch, the octopus, and she can scuttle up walls and go across the ceiling.
Big Baby is this big tattooed thug.
Chunk. He's not very smart, but it's all about muscle.
Twitch, action figure, bug, mutant, muscle guy.
Ken has the body we all wish we had.
Lotso's in charge because he's the smartest in the group.
You lost, little doggy?
Lotso is this plush toy, which is a stuffed animal. Furry, stuff with material. He's a little bit older.
You could tell this thing's been slobbered on. It's been kicked, pulled, tugged, covered with a blanket.
We knew that in the final film, we wanted Lotso to be believably a plush figure. We wanted to have a sense of his construction. So we brought in a toy designer, somebody who had worked specifically with plush toys.
I brought a bunch of stuff to show you as far as materials, yeah.
We would think in terms of extraordinarily simple shapes.
We gave him the model and said, where would you cut the pieces of fabric to be able to stitch this together? And so he drew on our sculpt, and that's exactly how we built him.
We had a series of plush Lazzos made, and those early plush prototypes were very important for us because they helped inform the further design of him. But it was also great for the animators.
So when he walks, you want to see these wrinkles. It's weird because a soft plush bear doesn't weigh much, but you want him to feel like someone he's got a cane, he's got a little weight to him.
If you start at the bottom, pay your dues, life here can be a dream come true.
What was interesting to us was analyzing the reasons why he was the way he was. And when we came up with this notion of a toy being lost and then going through all these obstacles to make his way back home only to discover that he had just been callously replaced, it felt very toy-like. I mean, it's important if you're going to be in this world of toys, you want to give the toys problems that aren't human problems. You want them to be toy problems.
She don't love you no more. Now come on!
It's always awesome when you see a character being made. You're working on them and you kind of have an idea of what they look like. But when someone else takes them, they have their own perception. And that's the beauty of it.
It was a great responsibility. I knew that there were going to be really high expectations for this film, and I didn't want to disappoint anybody. And at the same time, I knew I was also creating new characters that were going to become part of this storied universe.
Just the way you're getting these kind of creases in here.
It was really fulfilling to work on characters on Toy Story 3 and add to the legacy of Toy Story 1 and 2.
They're fantastic.
Oh, I'm glad you like them.
Yeah,
That's it?
I love them.
At Pixar, the story process is highly collaborative, and we have a story department. And that's where the film is written and created and then born.
I think from the very, very beginning, we had this inkling that we wanted to have kind of a Western opening to the film. We just didn't know, what that meant and what that was going to be. And that really sprang from the great Buzz Lightyear space opening in Toy Story 2. Now, the original conception of the Western opening was quite different. The very first thing that we came up with was a big, quiet Sergio Leone kind of an opening.
We actually called it Showdown, and it came from the original script, and Bud Luckey boarded it.
Bud Luckey is a story artist who's been with us since the first Toy Story. He actually was instrumental in designing Woody. And at the time, he was just about to retire, and we thought this would be really nice to bring this full circle and have Bud board this sequence.
Toy Story 3. Okay. We begin by, we have a shot of the signature Toy Story clouds slowly moving.
So we had Woody as the gunslinger showing up in the town, and townspeople kind of peeking out from the windows. And we would show little inklings of things that were off a little bit, like, we realized, oh, that's Mr. Potato Head peeking out of a window, so we started to work in these little Toy Story ideas. All of a sudden, light glinted in Woody's eyes, and he looked up, and the sun kind of resolved into Buzz's jetpack. And Buzz was coming down and landing at the other end of town. And they had kind of a showdown.
Your reign of terror is over, Lightyear. You best leave these innocent folks alone.
Before I kill you, Sheriff, I just want to know one thing.
Yeah.
And right before they're about to fire, suddenly all the facades of the town would fall down and disco lights would come on, and it would turn into this crazy dance party. And what we were going to then reveal is that these toys were now Molly's toys. All that really is left of that idea is the notion that Molly, is on her iPod reading her tween magazine and clearly not interested in toys.
Why do you still have these toys?
Molly, out of my room.
We realized pretty quickly that doing the slow Western, it was very stylish, it was very cool, but it was not the way to open the movie.
We felt like they needed this really kick-butt opening. These characters, they deserved being reintroduced in this really amazing way.
We went back to the drawing board, and I decided to just blow the whole thing up and say, okay, if we're not doing that kind of Western, let's make this feel like the audience has come in late to a movie. So we gathered all the story guys together, and we said, okay, here's the context. We want to do a Western opening. I want to introduce each of the toys. Other than that, the sky was the limit.
And so we just threw drawings out and came up with ideas in classic brainstorming fashion. And through that, we came up with, well, Ham has a spaceship, and Slinky is the force field dog, and we're gonna steal that from Toy Story 1. We're gonna steal Rex eating the force field, bursting though out of the ground because Jesse yodels.
I then went away with that and kind of created an outline. And the next step, of course, was to then board that.
And so we need someone crazy and action-oriented. Who is our action movie person in this studio?
And so I turned to Mark Andrews, a brilliant story guy who Brad Bird brought to the studio.
And so Mark took all of our beats and just put them through him.
It was like this reboot of the opening.
So, opening of the movie, right? We got the clouds, we got the Toy Story, and then the Brants burns away.
It was like big-time Western with trains and trolls and explosions, race cars, and then this whole other element of science fiction. It was just insane.
We gave him Mrs. Potato Head's the ninja, but he had her, the throwing stars and the flipping was all him. The pig ship that we gave him became the pig ship that we know now, this massive floating ham in the sky. That was Mark.
That's what he was doing.
That version, it went as big as you could, and all the set pieces were all there. But a big thing about these sequences, and when we make these sequences, is they have to work in the movie as a whole.
There was a time early on where we would get notes saying, wow, that was a really fun opening, but you could hack it off and you'd never miss it. And that always troubled me because I didn't want to do anything arbitrarily. So we really had to think, okay, what is the Western opening then? This idea of having kind of a flashback came up. We would come out of the Western opening and be with Andy, young Andy, playing with the toys. Thus show that what we had just seen, this crazy Western opening, was just a visualization of Andy's playtime. The problem was then very easily solved and let us not only have fun with the opening of the film, but it's there for a very specific reason. Now, looking at the film, it seems like an obvious thing to do, and it seems like something that really makes sense. But the road to get there was pretty convoluted.
Whoa, stop. Take a look at this skull for a second. In an animated film like Toy Story 3, somebody has to build every single thing you see on the frame. And it's not just one somebody, it's a whole lot of somebodies. First of all, somebody had to come up with the idea that there's even a skull in this frame. Then somebody in story had to draw it and place it here. The art department had to draw up the plans and handed it to a modeler who built it in the computer. Great as that model looks, it still isn't complete until it's shaded and then lit. And this is just one object that appears in 51 frames, that's just over 2 seconds of a 93-minute film. 139,680 frames, all full of things like this skull. But most of those things are actually animated. This film took hundreds and hundreds of people, all gathered together behind one central vision.
I was the first person onto this movie, and I will be the last person off at the bitter end. But in the middle, there are a lot of really, really talented people, and I couldn't make this movie without them.
We wanted to start the movie out with a bang. We wanted to start it out with a really exciting action adventure worthy of these characters. It's been a long time since we've seen them.
I did the color script for the film. A color script is a series of paintings to describe how color, lighting, and atmosphere can support the story.
I helped decide the lighting for this sequence. We were going for an over-the-top Western style, lots of beautiful oranges and vibrant blue skies.
For Western opening, we wanted to design simple, monumental buttes and a big, big sky.
I thought it would be fun to actually take cues from the wallpaper in Andy's bedroom and create very realistic-looking clouds, but styling them to echo very much the wallpaper in Andy's bedroom.
I painted hundreds of clouds for this sequence.
I animated the potato heads on their getaway
enjoying the loot in the car.
I did a simulation of coins filling the trunk of the car and flowing through the hands of characters.
I lit this shot. The challenge was you don't really see the Buzz Lightyear flying from the sun in the daily life. So I used my imagination to light the shot.
The laser isn't too complicated, it's just a red tube that I made glow. The effects department creates anything that moves that the animation department doesn't take care of. For example, dust, which would be too hard for the animation department to do.
I've done a lot of dust in my career. I made this dust right here.
So this is where I held on the board just a bit too long to give it a little cartoon physics so the characters hang in the air before they fall.
My job was to decide where to put the camera and which angle will best tell the story. In this shot, I put the camera low so that it would appear that Buzz, Woody, and Jessie were in control of the situation.
Reach for the sky.
Most of the dialogue in this sequence is referencing dialogue from the original Toy Story.
Reach for the sky.
So that you'd get the sense that Andy played similar games all through his childhood.
With Mrs. Potato Head's nunchucks, we have to decide what they are. Where do they come from? Are they wood with a steel chain? How do they behave? Someone's going to design them, someone's going to build them, and then animate them. So even on the smallest level, there's all these little design choices that have to be made.
I animated all the characters in this sequence, but the hardest character would be Mrs. Potato Head because she does this awesome nunchuck move, and we wanted it to look like a Bruce Lee move, but it's really hard to make a potato head look like Bruce Lee.
Right at 12, Lee likes to eat lunch, and so we make sure that it's up in his office and that he can just take a break and eat.
Mostly eat the same thing every day. He likes grilled chicken, sometimes in the form of a sandwich, but always a steamed broccoli. He loves steamed broccoli.
I did the storyboards of Slinky coming down the mountain. We wanted it to feel bigger than life, this sort of big robot monster dog coming down the mountain to get into the fight with Jessie, Buzz, and Woody.
Slinky's different because you have the two parts, and the Slinky itself in the middle feels like a third character. So you're not just having one character act and do its thing. You're actually having three parts work together as a whole.
This is the force field. It's kind of a little sphere, which is actually not that hard to do, but you'll notice there's little bits of electricity all the way around. So that was a little bit tricky. But then I ended up creating this, what's known as a Voronoi diagram, to create these patterns and distorted them to make them look like electrical bolts. Essentially, I just drew a bunch of lines.
In the storyboards, when Jessie yodels, we always started with a close-up of her uvula wiggling in the back of her throat, and we kind of pulled back from there as the shock wave kind of spread out from her. But of course, Jessie, the cowgirl, the toy, has no uvula, which kind of bums me out a bit because I kind of like uvulas.
I did the effect of the explosive shockwave caused by Jessie's yodel.
In Andy's mind, Rex is a real ferocious dinosaur, but Rex's personality, of course, is that he's very timid. So this is a fun opportunity to play Rex against his personality type and actually animate him like a real dinosaur.
I added the effects of Rex bursting up through the ground, all the rocks and the dust and the debris.
So the cool thing about this is it had to be an airplane, a spacecraft, and a battleship all rolled into one in the shape of a pig.
So the production designer wanted to see things that you would see on real airplanes or real spaceships, that there needed to be vents, there needed to be access panels, there needed to be a sense of how this thing was actually built in real life, even though it's a pig ship.
I worked on the hoof thrusters, basically the plasma and heat coming out of the bottom of the feet of the pig ship.
Well, to get the sound of the pig ship, we recorded the subway and then added in the sound of the recording studio sliding glass door.
In order to keep the clouds from looking static, I added a little bit of cloud drift so that they were moving throughout the shot.
I thought it'd be really cool use of camera if we just flew into the eye of the ham ship to reveal evil Dr. Porkchop.
I designed the lighting of the shot, and this lens flare over here helped me transition the lighting from the outside into the cockpit.
After all this great work at Pixar, we still have to get the composer to score the film, Skywalker to do the sound effects and mix the movie, make film prints at the lab so we can bring the movie to your local theater, and translate into 42 different languages.
These films are so huge, they actually don't work perfectly on paper. What really gets them done is the incredible collaboration and teamwork with the artists and the managers that get behind the director's vision and make it happen. It's a gorgeous thing to watch.
I'd like to join your posse, boys, but first I'm gonna sing a little song.
A sheriff! Move over, Mr. Prickle Pants.
Every movie has a sequence that doesn't go quite as smoothly as all the others. When we're lucky, sequences sail through, we board them, they're great, and they go into production, and then others tend to be more of a struggle. And the sequence that we call Bonnie's Playtime had a long life and went through a lot of iterations before we finally ended up with what's in the movie. This is the sequence where Woody is waylaid from his goal, which is really to get back to Andy's in time to go to college.
Yeah, this sequence, there's really three dilemmas. There's finding Bonnie. Like, who is Bonnie? Because we knew we had to create a character that was new to the universe that the toys were going to end up with. Then we also had to come up with who are the toys in her room? Who's this new family that our toys are going to be connected with? And then the third is you can't have anybody in the audience guess that.
Yeah, make the scene as entertaining as possible, but make sure it just seemed like a complication on Woody's road. My personal inspiration for this character was Gilda Radner did a skit on the original Saturday Night Live, the Judy Miller Show. And it's this little girl left alone in her room and the crazy playtime she puts on.
Presenting the very, very beautiful Queen of France. Je vous en de beau sauvant de beau.
I just loved her exuberance and how it was full of non sequiturs, and for me, that was the way to kick this all off.
One of the things we were talking about early on with her, before anything was boarded, was just the difference in play between Andy and Bonnie.
Somebody's poisoned a water hole.
Poison?
And the idea that Bonnie would inject herself as a
That's
character.
right.
So I did all these little images of just dress up. And so there's ones where she's dressed as a little bride and she's got a little walrus and a bow tie and they're getting married, or she's got like a paper bag on her head, like a fake chef's hat. Just trying to differentiate, you know, this little girl play from Andy's play, but how could it still be entertaining and all-inclusive as far as the toys she's involving?
I always thought that was fun about Bonnie's room, how these toys, Andy's room was very structured. I mean, Woody would have his meetings, but in Bonnie's room, it really felt like they were this ragtag group of Thunderdome dwellers.
Yeah, something that you guys really talked about, you and Jason, how does a kid play? You know, like when a kid plays with their toys, it starts off like an army scene, but then it turns into they're in prehistoric times, and then they go to the future. And a kid...
And you did a million things
yeah,
like
I did so many different versions.
And she was all over the house. You had this bit where Bonnie was in the bathtub with Woody.
We're so old. Where's our proof?
And then we went to the mad scientist.
Let's see if the brain operation worked.
And you had a bit where it was like Empire Strikes Back.
I'm here to rescue you.
And then there was just so many quick ideas on a sit and spin as a time-traveling device.
The sequence was really entertaining in a lot of ways, but one of the biggest notes we got was that the toys were being physically manhandled too much, and it wasn't serving to do what I wanted it to do, what it needed to do, which was to be a contrast to what the other toys back at Sunnyside were going through. And the other thing that I know Michael Arndt, the writer, was struggling with was dialogue for Bonnie. To my ear, it wasn't sounding like a real little kid.
Yeah.
I felt like we were having a hard time finding her voice. We hit a point where we were starting to panic, right? Because we had a lot of these great ideas, but the scene hadn't really coalesced. We finally just said, let's kind of come at it from a different direction. And that's where Eric comes in.
I'm the 5-year-old little girl voice.
like weird, crazy humor. And you went off and came back with what is essentially in the movie.
I'm trying to stay in character.
The characters shushing each other, and the bit flying around in the spaceship.
Fasten your seatbelts. Hold on. 3, 2, 1, blast off!
Yeah, I watched the scene. There was a lot of fun and exuberance, and then I went back and I watched Andy playing with his toys.
Let her go, evil Dr. Porkchop. Never!
And he always had good guys and bad guys. So I looked at the lineup of our new characters and I thought, well, maybe we make the sweetest, cutest one the evil witch.
You'll never find us in here. What's wrong? Ah! She found us!
And the play actually, it got a little pushed back in a good way.
It became almost more like connective tissue between these moments of getting to actually know the characters better. You know, in Toy Story, we came up with the notion of toys being like office mates. But in thinking about Bonnie's toys, we had the opportunity to kind of rethink that.
The dynamic.
Right.
Bonnie's age.
And so we came up with this notion of them being like a theater troupe.
We do a lot of improv here. Just stay loose, have fun, you'll be fine.
No. And like in the moment with Trixie, she's making up her own vision of what, she sees it like an improv.
We're either in a cafe in Paris or a coffee shop in New Jersey. I'm pretty sure I just came back from the doctor with life-changing news.
And then when they have a little break, Pricklepants saying,
Are you classically trained?
which I think was your line. It's just awesome because suddenly there's this rich inner life to what's going on there that you don't have to write a quote unquote funny line, and the best dialogue does that.
And I think in the decisions we made and what we ended up with, I love what's in the movie, and I feel very fortunate that I know the different versions in the past, so I can create my own remix.
You guys draw literally thousands and thousands of drawings, but none of those drawings end up in the movie at all. Nobody who goes to see Toy Story 3 is going to see any of your drawings. But they do certainly see those ideas behind the drawings. So I always liken it to, like, you guys are architects creating blueprints. We can see a beautiful Frank Lloyd Wright house, but nobody is actually seeing the blueprints. But you couldn't build that beautiful house without those blueprints. And in the same way, we cannot make our movies without the work that you guys do. I love you guys. At the very beginning of this process, we came up with this idea that Andy would give away the toys to a little girl. We knew that that was the best thing for Andy to do at this moment because Toy Story 3 is about change. It's about embracing change. It's about people being faced with change and how they deal with it. One of the things that really worried me about the scene was that it's ostensibly a scene of two humans interacting. The burden was going to be on my animators and my technical crew to create human characters that were appealing, but also had a degree of control and finesse. Toy Story is a really tricky place to be because it's very important that there be a differentiation between the humans and the toys. One of the criticisms we got on the early Toy Story films is that the humans kind of look like toys themselves almost.
We all wish we could have done Andy better, so this was actually our fun opportunity.
We've learned a lot about how to make humans look better, to get that balance right between like caricature, like cartoon and realism.
Humans are always a tricky thing in animation. There's this thing called the uncanny valley. There was a Japanese researcher who did a lot of studies in robotics. He found that the more you took a robot or a CG human and gave it kind of human characteristics like eyes, it would become more appealing. And you could get closer and closer to looking like a real person. But there was a point, right when it was looking like it was almost human, people were repulsed by it. And he called that kind of dip the uncanny valley. And now that we can do humans better in CG than we could 11 years ago on Toy Story, there's a choice to be made. Well, how realistic do you make them? How do you stylize them? It was a very tricky tightrope to walk.
I think it's really good. We want to make Andy very appealing, and he has to carry a lot of acting. He's got has a lot of range. He's got the big scene with Bonnie at the end. So we want to make sure that he was appealing, looked like kind of a grown-up Andy, and could really act.
We knew actually if we nailed it, if we nailed Goodbye Andy in the way they interact with each other, the expressions, the emotions, and everything, we felt, well, the character's going to work for the rest of the show.
Getting him dialed in, I think, was pretty good design challenge. The neat thing is we still had the original voice, and he's older. He's in his 20s.
So you're Bonnie. I'm Andy.
One of the decisions that I made very early on this film was to reach out to John Morris, the actor who had played young Andy in Toy Story and Toy Story 2.
I think my favorite scene is the end with Bonnie. Andy is 18, going to college. It's a pivotal point for him. Was pivotal for me. And, there's the question of what is he going to do with his toys?
You show up and here's this little girl you've never seen before.
Right.
Right? Playing really imaginatively in the front yard, right?
These are mine, but I'm going away now, so I need someone really special.
So Lee spent a ton of time thinking about how he was going to pitch this to the animators and what kind of performances he wanted out of it. So when we do that, we have this thing called animation briefing.
When I talk to my animators, very often I'm not talking to them about, you know, the shape of a move or the exact position of a pose that another director with an animation background might bring to the table. What I am always thinking about is the inner life of the character. This kind of confusion about where he is or why he's there, you want to see that kind of melt and give away to, you know, just this bemused smile. The idea here is that he's recognizing himself in her.
You know, the big thing with Goodbye Andy that he really stressed was what it meant for Andy as a character to be handling and saying goodbye to these toys.
It shouldn't just be like, oh, it's another toy he's pulling out of the box. He should be cradling each one. Each one should feel just as special as the last.
And then you have that moment when you get to Woody and he shows up in the box.
And then he starts to realize how Bonnie reacts to this toy because she kind of reaches for it. And I just remember Lee, he made sure he's like, but don't have her be pouty.
He looks at Woody and he's at that point, I think, thinking about what's best for Woody and maybe letting go of the things that he had as a kid.
Now Woody, he's been my pal for as long as I can remember. He's brave, like a cowboy should be.
All of a sudden, here's 10-year-old Andy a little bit coming to the surface, being asked to give up this thing that's important to him. I think you want to linger him there for a minute, and he looks up at her.
It's kind of a more open.
Yeah, and then the sigh is not, you don't want it to feel at all negative. It's like a softening. He knows what he's doing now, and he's cool with it, and he's...
Okay.
Now he knows he needs to really tell her how important he is.
You know, these characters have spent their whole lives being there for the service of this one owner of Andy. And they have to go through Andy not caring about him or seeming to not care about him, thinking Andy's throwing him away. What if we go to a place where we don't have an owner? It's just a constant rental situation.
We've spent this whole movie of Woody coming to Andy's defense like a broken record, annoyingly at some times, insisting that Andy cares about them. This is just his moment to be vindicated, right? That everything he's been saying about Andy is absolutely true.
Thanks, guys.
At the end of the scene, he was going to get in his car and leave, and that was going to be the end of the movie. But to me, it felt like not quite enough. I felt like there needed to be one more element, and that, in my mind, was having Andy play with these toys one last time. This is a moment where he's just with this sweet little, 4-year-old girl, and he can just let go of all those pressures of being a grown-up and being a teenager, and just have this one last visit, this unbridled, exuberant visit to his youth. So I thought that was important for Andy to have that before he went off to college, but I also thought it was particularly lovely that the toys got to have that. Because at the beginning of the film, when Potato Head says,
"The kid's 17 years old. We ain't ever getting played with."
It's true. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, the notion that a 17-year-old would play with toys anymore. And we were truthful to that at the beginning of the film. But I love that Potato Head was wrong. I love that Andy does have one more playtime with them, and it's a real playtime, and that these toys get everything that they've been craving and wanting all these years one last time.
Toy Story 3 does deal with the heavy stuff, but all the Toy Story films have. All the Toy Story films have been about mortality. It's all been about, who am I? Am I going to be replaced?
I need to believe these characters, and I do. Woody and Buzz and Jessie, these are not just cartoon characters to me. These are living, breathing people who have dreams and hopes and insecurities. They shouldn't be in a box in the attic. They shouldn't be sitting on his dorm room shelf.
You think you can take care of him for me? Okay, then.
One of the coolest things for me has always been that in many cases we're inventing toys that don't exist, yet ironically they end up being real toys that you can buy at the toy store. And it's very cool. We're not toy designers, yet somehow we kind of are toy designers, I guess. It's kind of weird how that works out.
We were in the final year of production on Toy Story, and all of the big toy companies passed on making toys for Toy Story. Disney Consumer Products went to this small toy company called Thinkway Toys, and the toy maker's name is Albert Chan, and so they offered him Toy Story, and he said yes, absolutely.
We had to design a complete line of toys, make the molds, manufacture, and ship to retailers in just a few short months.
And he was describing to me the toys that he is going to make. At that time, the action figure aisle, they only sold action figures that were about 6 inches high. But I kept saying, the kids are going to look up on the screen and they're going to want what Andy's playing with. They're going to want the real toy.
He said to me, Albert, just trust me. So I gave him my trust and made the 12-inch Buzz and 16-inch Woody.
These are the toys from Toy Story, Woody and Buzz. What's really cool about them is that they actually took our computer data and milled the molds for them. So, I mean, this is being on model to new heights. So this is exactly what's in the movie. It's pretty cool. So after he was finished, the orders that he had was only 60,000 Buzz Lightyears in all of North America and 45,000 Woodies. So he invested his own money and he made another 250,000 of Buzz Lightyear and of Woody the Cowboy. And he had those in a warehouse for reorders. The toys sold out prior to the movie opening.
And this is the Buzz Lightyear aisle. Back in 1995, short-sighted retailers did not order enough dolls to meet demand.
The reorders the week after the movie opened was 1.6 million Buzz Lightyears. And Albert has never stopped making Buzz Lightyear.
For most companies, it was risky business. For me, it was an investment that paid off and changed my life.
To this day, he has made over 35 million Buzz Lightyear dolls.
This has been fun on Toy Story 3 because this is the first time that I have been a part of creating characters who are becoming toys now. Part of our design process on Lotso was to actually create a real plush version of him because we knew that in the final film we wanted Lotso to be believably a plush figure. You know, we didn't want him to feel like a human in a costume. And those early plush prototypes helped inform the further design of him, figuring out his proportions and, you know, size of his facial features. But it was also great for the animators to have something physical that they could hold and look and see how a plush arm bent, or for the technical directors who had the daunting task of making his fur look real.
It's better for everyone.
At the time that we got those prototypes, it was very exciting because it was kind of that feeling of holding something that we were in the middle of creating. We don't take it for granted, even though it's been 15 years and we're used to these toys being made. There's still something very special and exciting about getting to see them for the first time.
See, they're buddies, but then they can also... Well, you...
My name's Lotso Huggin' Bear, and what I need is your love and care.